Welcome to the Business Growth Masterclass, where business growth is made simple. Listen as we discuss best practices to streamline your operations, increase your profits, and ultimately create healthier, more stable, and more valuable businesses. Today's guest is a good friend of yours, Kellen.
Yeah, so it's Tim Ashley, and he's the owner and president of the Clovis Concrete Company. He runs that business with his wife, Celeste, and it's a fourth generation, not third, I thought it was third, fourth generation business. And then Tim is also a county commissioner out in New Mexico and proud father of four. So that guy's got a lot going on. It's a great episode that I think we have for everybody to listen to. What's something that you enjoyed from our conversation today, Albert?
You alluded to it, and it's that this is a fourth generation business that started in 1957. And so many business owners, I think, want to build a legacy that they can pass on to their kids. And it's rare that it happens. It's rare that the kid is interested and can do it well. You know, you hear all these horror stories of second and third generation kids of businesses that, you know, are into drugs or whatever that just screw their life up.
Yeah.
And the fact that Tim's family has navigated that now for four generations
It's bananas
is crazy.
Yeah.
And to hear him talk about the dialogue and how they've navigated that over the years is insightful and interesting. And, you know, does he have 4 or 5 kids? He has a ton of kids.
Yeah.
And there's one kid who took a liking to it. He gave, so many options to all of his kids, and one of them was interested in it. And so I think it was awesome hearing how he's navigated that as a dad to give his kids options and build this legacy if they wanted to. And anyway, that blows my mind and is really uncommon. What about you?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, the fact that Tim, you got to stay in this episode towards the end because you get some of the best insights about what you were just talking about, that family business dynamic at the end. The other thing that I really enjoyed was he was talking about what a challenge it is right now to hire in this market. And there's a need for good help. And a lot of business owners feel that. And he's really creative in the way he thinks. You can tell that Tim is an outside of the box kind of guy. I think he even says that at one point. So just trying to think in a Tim Ashley kind of way, I think would help a lot of business owners out there. So, all right, without any further ado, let's get into it.
Here we go. Welcome to the podcast, Tim Ashley.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We've been looking forward to it.
Me too, actually.
Good. Well, just jumping right in, one of our first questions we want to ask is, if you could have lunch with any entrepreneur or business leader, dead or alive, who would it be?
Yeah, for me, that's an easy one. I would love to sit down and pick Elon Musk's brain. Yeah, that's in my mind, that's a pretty fascinating individual.
Oh, yeah.
He's of late become somewhat controversial, but yeah, I think he would be very interesting conversation.
Well, I would expect nothing less from the guy who drove up in a Tesla. So that's a good answer. I like that. So tell us about how you got started. Tell us about your business, and then how did you get into it?
Okay. Well, I own 2 different businesses. However, they kind of work together. I own Clovis Concrete Company, which is in Clovis, New Mexico. And that's a New Mexico subchapter S corporation. Then I own TNC Concrete LLC, which is a Texas LLC. Of course, Clovis Concrete is in Clovis, and TNC Concrete has 2 locations, one in Muleshoe, Texas, and one in Friona, Texas. And then I do also have another business. We are also in the aggregate business. That the pit is over in Fort Sumner, New Mexico. The processing facility is in Clovis.
Okay.
So we produce our own aggregates for our concrete.
So the aggregates are where you're mining what's used?
That's correct. Yeah,
okay.
We are in the mining business. Yeah.
Okay.
What are the ingredients in, saving any proprietary information? What are the ingredients that make up concrete?
It's not rocket science. I wouldn't be giving up a whole lot here. So yeah, it's just rock, sand, cement, and water. That's the major components for concrete. Then there's all kinds of chemistry that with chemical admixtures and things that manipulate the concrete to perform in certain ways. And that there's a whole myriad of that. But yeah, those basic 4 components, that's what it takes to make concrete.
So when you say aggregate, which of those components are aggregate?
The rock and the sand.
Rock and sand.
Yep.
Rock and sand.
All right. So how does somebody get into that business? How did you get into that business?
Well, how I got into it was my grandfather actually started Clovis Concrete back in 1957. So my business is older than I am. I guess you would say I was born into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I grew up. I tell people all the time. I don't think they believe me, but I learned to drive a front end loader before I knew how to ride a bike. So yeah, my parents believed in giving us a work ethic very early. So
yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it's great. I loved it. Probably kept me out of a lot of trouble when I was a kid. So
yeah,
it was a good experience. But yeah, he started it shortly after my dad joined him. And my grandfather actually passed away when I was just a small child. I really never knew him, so I never had that opportunity. But my dad continued it on after that. And then my brother and I were invited into the business as owners in the early 90s. And then my parents retired in 96 and my brother got out of the business in 2000. And so that kind of left me and my wife, Celeste. So,
wow.
So that is unique.
Yes.
Having a 3-generation family owned business. Tell me about, I'm sure that comes with a lot of challenges, but how do you handle, or I guess what went well and what maybe didn't in that kind of succession planning, multi-generation transfer?
Well, I will tell you, there's always challenges in any family operated business, right? Because you have your relationship with your parents or your children or, whoever the family is that might be in the business. And sometimes it's very difficult to keep from blurring those lines of business relationship from family relationship.
Yep.
So that is, I'm sure it's a challenge in any business. It's been a challenge in our business because you don't always see eye to eye about business things, or maybe you have personal issues that tend to bleed over at work, and things like that. So that is one challenge. And I would recommend to anybody that finds themselves into that situation is, if you're going to invite any of your family into your business, make sure you preface it with, hey, let it be understood that when we're at work, we are employer-employee relationship until we go off the clock and go home. Then you're my son, daughter, father, mother, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's a real challenge. And going along with this, my second oldest son, Josh, he graduated from Texas Tech with his bachelor's in finance, and he decided that he would like to work in the family business. So he is continuing on the 4th generation in our business.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really neat that there's a legacy there. Our business, if you look at when my grandfather started it back in 1957 to the market conditions today, it's a whole new world. It's entirely different. It still takes the same 4 components to make concrete, but everything else about the business has changed. And I'm not so sure that these changes are for the better. Things were much simpler then. You didn't have all the bureaucracies back then that we do today. So even my parents, now both my parents are deceased now, but even before they passed away, they would not have recognized the business just in the 15 years from when they were involved in it. Things have just are continually changing. And mainly when I talk about that, it's like regulations, things like that, because that really, with our industry, there is a lot of regulation.
So as a business owner, being a 3rd and now into the 4th generation business, you've had to go through so many different challenges. Can you tell us about one or two of those, or some things that you've had to overcome as an entrepreneur or a business leader?
Well, some of the things that I would say some of the biggest challenges we face right now, and this has been going back several years, is number one is finding good help.
Okay.
And we, all our drivers, because, our product, you have to stick it in a truck and it has to be delivered to the job site. So we, not only do we manufacture or produce concrete, but we are also a transportation industry too, because we have to get our product to the customer. So we operate our own fleet of trucks, and getting qualified, good help seems to be getting more difficult every year we go down the path.
We keep hearing
I don't think
business
that's
owners.
strictly to our industry. I think, a lot of different industries are facing that same thing today.
Yeah, we're hearing that in a lot of different sectors in business, is people trying to find good help is the big challenge. So what do you do? What are some of your strategies for looking for good people?
My son and I were visiting the other day about the possibility of possibly even starting a truck driving school, because that's been a real challenge. In New Mexico, you have to go to school to get your CDL. And there aren't a whole lot of schools in the whole state of New Mexico. So I think I understood the other day there might be one that's either recently opened up or thinking about opening up or something in the Clovis Portales area. So we'll definitely be looking at that. But our industry, because ours is local delivery, pretty much like 100 miles or less.
Yeah. Who is your, because y'all are, for the listener here, we're talking about, some small rural towns in West Texas and Eastern New Mexico. Mm-hmm. So what does your typical customer look like?
That is a broad range.
Really?
Yes, because we deal with huge corporations all the way down to the individuals pouring a sidewalk at his house. Mm. So our customer base is very wide and diverse. So one of our largest markets is Cannon Air Force Base. There's always something being built out there. So we definitely do a lot of work there. Road projects, things of that nature. We've done some large industrial projects. For example, the Cargill meat processing plant over at Freona, Texas. Mm-hmm. We did a wastewater treatment plant project over there a couple of years back, and that was a very large project. Wind generator projects. We did the wind turbines up on the Cap Rock near San Home, New Mexico. That's been several years back. That was a big project. So
that's quite a range of clients.
Yeah, from a lot of government contracting, it sounds like.
Yeah. Bridge work, things like that for both New Mexico DOT and TxDOT. A lot of projects like that. So anywhere you need concrete, that's pretty much where we go.
Fascinating. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you were talking about, finding the right help and training these truck drivers, one of the things that I was just thinking about is that's such a creative thing or way to think. A lot of business owners, when they feel stuck, let's just keep trying the thing we've been doing. So I love the idea of like, hey, what if we figure out a way to get our guys certified or just mm-hmm. thinking outside of the box like that. I would imagine you have to use a lot of strategies like that as a multi-generation business evolving all the time. Can you think of some other examples where you guys have had to change your strategy in the business to keep success?
Certainly, yes. Back in the 90s, we got involved in building corporate hog farms. And that required us to go out and get portable manufacturing plants, portable concrete batch plants to mm-hmm. produce this concrete on site at these different farm locations, because at the time they were building just one right after the other, and they weren't in one central location. So you needed a facility that would be high production, but at the same time be extremely mobile. And we found some equipment that fit that bill. And so we actually operated 4 of those different batch plants At the same time, up in the Oklahoma Panhandle, southern Kansas, northern Texas Panhandle, all the way from Perryton, Texas, Guyman, Oklahoma, up into some of the small towns in Kansas and so forth.
So you're not afraid to think bigger and do something a little bit unorthodox, I guess, in that sense, right?
Yeah, you follow the opportunity. And for example, that particular time, we had the situation in our market where we had work, but we also had some portable plants that we weren't using at the time. And a very unique situation. I just get a phone call out of the blue one day, and a guy that's working up in Dalhart on a project, they had a producer on that site, and for whatever reason, that relationship separated. And he called me and said, "Hey, I've got this project. We've got a lot of yards of concrete we're going to be needing on this project. Can you come up here and take a look, see if you'd be interested in doing it?" So we had never really ventured away out of our market at that time to do anything like that.
Was it scary the first time to do that?
In a way, I think, it could be because do I hire local drivers? Do I bring my guys from our current marketplace? How do we work this? So there was a little bit of learning curve to try and figure things out. We had the equipment to do it, so that really wasn't an issue. We had, at that time, our market wasn't just going crazy, so we had surplus equipment that we could deploy there. So that really wasn't too big of a challenge. But some of the logistics were, when you're working away from home and what and you've got to establish some new relationships with vendors. For example, in that situation, we had to go find other aggregate producers to be able to purchase the aggregates from. So we did that, and it wasn't that difficult to do.
Cool.
But whenever you're looking at something, you've got to change with the times. I mean, you've got to, whatever the market demands, you've got to follow it.
Yeah.
I'm finishing a book right now, Only the Paranoid Survive. And one of his main concepts in the book are these strategic changes where the market is demanding something, and your entire team isn't arriving at the conclusion that we need to change something in the business at the same time. So eventually there's some kind of triggering event that your entire team gets on board with. Okay, we need to change because of X, Y, and Z. And so it sounds like you've navigated that over and over and over. How have you gotten your team on board? I guess the senior leaders on board, you and your parents and your brother. How did y'all navigate that? Were y'all always on the same page?
Well, to be honest, that particular project and that particular time, I was really the only one trying to pitch it.
Okay.
Everybody else was a little bit hesitant. They were like, "Oh no, we've never done that before," and things like that. But after I went and visited the project, talked to the project manager, and came back and said, "Hey guys, this is what I've negotiated. Are you on board or not?" And they crunched the numbers and
made sense.
Yeah,
cool.
It made sense. There really wasn't too much to fight with on that argument. So everybody kind of understood that. And we went and did that project, and that was kind of what launched us into much more, because that was just one portable plant on one site. And within a year, we moved up the road to around Guyman, Oklahoma, and took on multiple projects and purchased some more portable plants. By that time, everybody's like, "Well, we better get some more portable plants so we can facilitate the demand here." So that's what we did.
You just never know when one door is going to lead to another and another after that. It's cool. But you had to walk through that first door. You had to have the open mind to say, "Hey, this is an opportunity, and I'm going to drive out there and see if it's worth it." I think that's a great takeaway for a lot of our listeners and business owners out there is, if you're hustling and you're taking the call and you're checking things out, you never know what might come of it if you're going for it. You're working hard. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I've always thought of the expression of thinking outside the box, and not be scared to step out of what you've always done, in order to pursue something that might be new to you.
Cool.
And be flexible, keep an open mind. Don't jump into things, consider it very carefully and thoroughly. But if you got to change, you need to change.
Yeah.
That what you're describing, the author of the book, I think he was one of the co-founders of Intel, and he's describing these strategic shifts of, hey, I know the needs or the market is changing in this way, and you kind of have to experiment a little bit. Like he's describing, he's figuring out, there's this new need and it's a problem to be solved. And at the same time, you can't completely abandon everything you're doing right now in the rest of your operation. That you're kind of, experimenting. You've got these hog farms that, like, all right, if we do a couple of these, all right, that worked. Now we can invest more money. We can go bigger. We can bring more of the team along. That's, I think we overcomplicate what innovation is. It's not innovation to 99% of the businesses. It's not Silicon Valley. It's this new need in the market, and how can we tweak what we're doing? How can we go figure out how to make it make business sense? And then you seek out a kind of a proof of concept, do it small.
Right.
That works. All right, now let's do it a little bigger. And that's, your industry, 4th generation concrete company. I mean this, I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's kind of this boring business that is always a need. Like, everybody needs concrete. It's not.
There's never a boring day in the concrete business.
I don't doubt. It's not like this, social media, TV, sexy technology company, right?
No.
It's this just staple that is always a need, that it's making concrete, but it's endlessly complex and endlessly changing, right? Because you're constantly innovating this business. And I don't know. I love that. And there's so many these like trades and services and things like that where, there is this lack of new labor, lack of new people entering the market, that I don't know. I feel like we need to tell this story more, because this is real innovation and a real business that's been around since the 50s.
Right.
But, like, we need kids to get into that.
Yeah. And so on that note, it gets me thinking, like, what's the why for you? What is it that drives you day to day, that is your purpose in the business?
Really, it's pretty simple. It's put the beans on the table.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. If you can't make money at it, then it's not a business, it's a hobby.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
That's what it really boils down to. Now, I love the work of the business, getting out on the loader and, pushing up stockpiles and, things like that, and going out there to the job site and checking on jobs and things like that, visiting with my customers and all that. I really do love that.
That's,
the part I don't love is the bureaucracy that's exploded in the last few years, and
say more about that. What kind of bureaucracy do you mean? Like regulations and things like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Regulations. And it's both on, for example, our business is regulated by the Air Quality Bureau, the OSHA.
Okay.
Our mine is regulated by MSHA, the DOT, because you're running CDL licensed drivers on the road on commercial vehicles.
That's a lot of red tape already.
Oh yeah, because you've got to keep compliance files on the vehicles. You have to keep compliance files on the drivers. And along with the drivers, you have to have a drug testing pool that your drivers periodically have to be drug tested. They have random pools for different drivers. Pre-employment, you've got to drug test every driver that comes and applies for the job if you're going to hire them. You have to do background checks, you have to run their information to the national database, Federal Motor Carrier database. Yeah. So that's the big challenge right now, because there's a whole lot of things that have to be done just to hire one driver.
And then if that person leaves, all of that was just lost.
Yeah. And that is a real challenge because you do all this work to hire, and I say you do all the work, but you also pay a lot of money.
Yeah.
All these things to pull an MVR, it costs you so much money. To do a drug test costs so much money. Yeah, it's both a burden on time and money.
Yeah.
So
I want to camp out here a little bit because I loved the creativity at the start of this, but labor, this skilled trade labor is the biggest problem, facing our trades and our so many of our businesses that, aren't sitting behind a computer.
Yeah.
Those trades are dying for people.
Yes.
And it's just going to continue to get more and more expensive. And there's fewer and fewer people going into that industry. And you mentioned earlier a truck driving school, which is fascinating. What are some other tactics that you've used over the years to bring in employees, bring in talent into your business?
Well, pay is always significant.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You try to be on the top side of the industry pay scale, to try and bring those better people in. But one thing I've discovered through the years is better pay doesn't always equal better employees.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate, but it is the truth. You can still get unqualified people, even though you're paying better. And so one thing that we do is we do extensive training with our new hires so that we can find out before they get on the open road, is this guy got what it really takes to operate this vehicle down the highway. So we try to weed out bad candidates as soon as possible.
That's good.
So that's one thing that we've really extended our driver training.
Mm-hmm.
Some companies they're in a rush. They need drivers now because the demand is there and all that, and they'll just throw a guy in a truck and
hope it works out.
Yeah, that is not a good path to go down. But we really emphasize training and safety awareness. That is a big thing in our industry.
So I know you and Celeste, your wife, run the business together, right? Or
yes.
she's a big part of that.
Oh yeah.
So can you tell
Everybody
us?
says she's a boss. So.
That's great. So can you tell us a little bit, and especially for those who are listening that have a family member or it's a husband-wife duo that are running the business, how do you guys balance that and just the dynamic together running a business?
That's a challenge. It's now for me, it's great because, my soulmate is my business partner.
Yeah.
I think probably the thing that I regret is that I take home business a lot. It is, I said you need to keep those lines clear, and I'm probably not real good at that myself, because, but it's kind of the natural thing. I mean, I guess even if you didn't work together, you still go home and talk about your day at work, right?
Sure.
So, we go home and, oh man, did you get that email out to that customer? Did that customer had a private issue on the invoice? Did you get that copy over to them?
Yeah.
It's funny.
It's hard to turn it off.
It is.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to turn off. And the real challenge, we just recently got back from 2 weeks in Alaska, and we were joking about it because the funny thing is when you go on vacation and you own your own business, you're never really on vacation.
Yeah.
Because the phone still rings. Hey, boss, we got to get this question. And it's just, you're never really away from it. So sometimes that's difficult. But at the same time, the great thing is, just like today, I didn't have to go into work. I can kind of set my own schedule.
That's nice.
And, if I need to take some time off to, go to my daughter's band concert or something like that, I can do that. So, it's got its pros and cons.
Yeah.
But, for mine and Celeste's situation, I think it's worked out really good. She's we're good. We are good counterparts because she is very conscious about different things. She's not what you would call a risk taker. Me, on the other hand, I'm kind of the gambler.
Yeah.
And so we kind of counteract each other. And that's that, sometimes when I think about, different issues, it's really funny, the conversations. And now the good thing is, that was a good thing about bringing my son Josh into the business, because he kind of refs that, right?
He's the third vote.
Exactly. Yeah, he gets to be the tiebreaker. So that's a real interesting dynamic.
Well, it's good for people to have that complementary business partner. I mean, obviously, it's not for everybody. It's not going to be their spouse, but having somebody who can balance you and give you that other perspective, that's a really nice thing to have in your business and in your leadership. But
that's fascinating that y'all have navigated that, because so many people don't and can't.
Yeah.
And navigating that with family, I feel like you have a lot of self-awareness. And so what would you say you are uniquely gifted to do in your business? What is kind of your wheelhouse, your sweet spot
Personally?
That you personally?
Well, I'm kind of the people person. That's kind of my thing. My wife, she likes to be the recluse that kind of, sits in the back office and just does her thing, doesn't want any interruptions and stuff like that. So I'm kind of that front guy. Right. So that's kind of my place. My son, his thing is getting out there and kind of doing the work. He hates staying in the office, which, we need him in the office, but he's always looking for that opportunity, to
get out
to
and
run out
work.
the door on the yard and go do something, So it's like I said, it's a fascinating dynamic in the family. And I have other children. My oldest son, him and his wife are both physical therapists and live in the DFW area. He chose not to be part of the family business, and I'm proud of him for what he's done and support him all the way. And I then there's Josh, my third oldest son. He's still figuring out life, and my youngest son is an Aggie down at College Station, and he's going into nuclear physics. So it doesn't look like he's headed for a career in concrete, because when he told me that's what he wanted to do, I'm like, well, it's great, but a nuclear physicist really doesn't do much for a concrete producer. So whatever.
Brainiacs. Oh
Maybe
my goodness.
Maybe build a bunker or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the baby is my daughter, and we had 4 boys and then our baby girl, and she's 15 right now. She's a freshman out at Shallow Water. Yeah. So, and I talk to her all the time. Hey, you maybe got an interest helping your brother out in the business. But I don't know. She's kind of wanting to pursue engineering or something. It's kind of what she's thinking. So we'll see what happens.
Cool. Man. So as a business owner, it's often not all roses. And I know you've already talked about some of that, but can you tell us a story about, I don't know, when things went wrong or something that just blew up in your face?
Well, I can tell you an interesting story.
Okay.
As I mentioned, back in the 90s, we were doing these corporate hog farms. And this one particular project we were on, we had been shut down by weather for, I don't know, about a week or something like that. And as I said, we use these portable facilities, and you're, like in this situation, you're out in the middle of a field and out in the country, and we hadn't been out there for a while. Well, we go back, start plant up, and they're going to pour these barn floors, and we start loading the trucks up, and the first truck gets over to the project, and he hollers back on the radio and says, "I can't believe what just happened." And we're like, "What?" He said, "I started dumping the concrete and a whole family of raccoons came down the chute." He said, "You have never seen so many guys run for their life." These things were still alive, and evidently they were really angry. So that was very interesting. Yeah. We told him we wouldn't charge him for the raccoons.
Wow. That's hilarious.
Wow.
Yeah. Just come pouring out of the equipment. Huh? What a day. What a day on the job.
I mean, it's amazing that the things were still alive. I mean, could you imagine the ride?
Yeah, no kidding. Wow. Yeah, those are some angry raccoons.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, so what are you most excited about moving forward in your business and, on the horizon? What are you looking at that gets you up every day?
Retiring.
You don't seem like the type who just wants to go play golf all day. What does that look like?
No, like I said, I love the people, I love the business and all that. But at the same time, I'm 61 years old. I mean, I guess I got a few more good years in me, but it is time to start thinking about that other chapter of life. I have grandkids through my oldest son that's down in the DFW area. So yeah, I'd like a little more time to go play with the grandkids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And be with them. So yeah, like I said, it's an interesting phase of life trying to figure things out like that. But, we kind of have a transition plan in place with my son. So yeah, at some point I'd like to kind of pass the torch down and say, it's your turn,
That's cool.
take off with this. I give him guidance, but when you're working with your son, sometimes that's maybe the advice isn't taken as great as it would be by somebody else or something.
Yeah.
But, I think I've told people this story before, but when I was in my mid 20s, how you view your dad, right? So,
Right.
when I was, in my teens, 18, 19 years old, I'm like, man, my dad is stupid. He is so stupid. And, I got to my, mid 20s, late 20s, and I'm like, well, I guess dad kind of knew a few things.
Yeah. Dad's getting smarter. Yeah.
Yeah. I got into my 40s and I was like, my dad was a genius. So I think that's just all that development stage. And, my son, Josh, he's 31, I believe. And so, he's starting to say, maybe dad knows a little bit of something.
Yeah, I think so.
That's fine. So, okay. So I do have a question. Y'all have passed this business down for now coming on 4 generations. Was that something that y'all did really formally with legal paperwork and all of that, or was it something more informal that it was just a conversation you guys had until it was time to completely hand over the reins?
Well, as I mentioned, when my grandfather passed away, I was pretty much a baby.
Yeah.
So I really wasn't on the scene at the time, but from what I understand, it was a kind of a buyout process, Well, my grandfather passed away. So it was my dad purchasing part of the business from my grandfather's estate.
I see.
So that's kind of how that worked. Then when my mom and dad decided to retire, it was a formal deal. There was a purchase agreement of basically the corporation purchased back their stock. And so, there was a formal agreement, formal plan, kind of laid out.
I think that's so good because I think a lot of business owners that want to retire just don't know how to, and maybe they don't have a son or a daughter who can take over the business. But even if you do, having it in a formalized way that is set up the right way, and there's too many people out there that we've talked to that thought they had a good handshake agreement, and then it ends up in a bad place. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in that.
Well, just navigating that in that way where they're setting up this purchase agreement. It is like his son's going to earn it. His son's going to pay that off. Right. And so it is, I think, empowering to the next owner, because there's always the other hands who are, we got that given to him. Wish I had that, but like he bought it.
Yeah. And as a business owner, you feel better about that too. I think you probably take more pride in the fact that it's yours and you had to work for that. It wasn't just handed over.
Yeah. I think not only is there a sense of pride, but I think that, if you're given something, you don't really understand what the value of what that was you were given.
Yeah.
Versus if you purchase it, you know exactly what the value was.
Yep.
So now I would say, as I look back at that whole situation when my parents retired and got out of it, we were told one thing, and we should have, and at the time I wanted to get everything. Hey, let's get this all down in black and white so we know exactly who's doing what, when, and how, and get all that worked out. We didn't do that, and that was not a good thing because when it came down to it, it didn't work out exactly how I was promised. But at the same time, I don't have any kind of resentment or anything about it. I mean, God's blessed me in what I've done, and I have no place to complain. And I think it's like you say, it was a little bit harder path, but at the same time, I think, I know the value of it. Yeah, I don't have any regrets, so to speak.
Have you navigated that conversation and that dialogue differently with your son?
Well, we haven't really got to that transition point yet, but my son is an owner in the business after he worked there for a few years. And I told him that when he had this conversation about, hey, Dad, this is what I'd like to do. I said, well, if you stick with me, I'll make you an owner. And I stuck to my word, and he is.
So he's earning it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And
That's cool.
This is such a healthy conversation that
Yes.
I wish it was easier to have these conversations, because if you can have that open dialogue where everyone knows, what we're thinking as a business owner, and what that's going to look like. I think of these movies where there's like this, rich grandfather who passes away and everyone shows up for the reading of the will because they have no idea what's going to happen, and talk about a terrible time.
What a mess.
Just to ruin your family.
Yeah.
And so it's incredible that you guys have a fourth generation business, because so many families screw it up, and I don't know. I'm fascinated by that, and that this dialogue that you guys have pursued over the years with, I'm sure there were tense moments, but it sounds like you guys have worked through all of that through the years to be able to, still like each other and still work together.
Yeah. It's always, great to see, because, my wife, she loves all our kids, but Josh every day, working with him, she loves Josh, and it's fun to watch, sit back and just watch. Sometimes I just sit over the corner and just take it all in, because the dynamics between the two of them it's hilarious.
I heard a phrase: you don't love your kids equally, you love them uniquely.
That's definitely
good.
For sure.
I like that. I think I'm going to steal that. Yeah. I think for what is second nature to you, Tim, and I know you're describing your dynamics in your family and the business, but I think for a lot of business owners, it's insightful, because it is a rare thing to see a business change hands in a family generation after generation, and do so successfully. That communication and the fact that you guys can have those conversations over the years and do it in a way that doesn't get people upset. And I mean, obviously
I wouldn't say they never get upset,
but to still be able to do it successfully is really cool. So
what a
lot to learn.
What a superpower. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Well, you've got to know, when you're working with family, there's going to be difficulties. There's going to be times not everybody agrees, but at the same time, it's fantastic to know that it's your family, and they have your back like nobody else would.
Yeah.
That's just like me and Celeste. I know that, whatever happens, she has my back, and I have her back. So it's great to have that security, with you.
Yeah. It's a legacy.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's time for our fire round.
I think it's time for the fire round.
All right, Tim, tell us, what's your favorite movie?
Oh, wow. I think probably the original Matrix.
Nice.
The original? I haven't watched that. And were you a huge surround sound guy? That was like when
surround sound first came out.
At home, surround sounds became a thing. It was like that movie.
I just the whole principle of the movie is fascinating. I don't think Hollywood ever meant to, but I think there's some spiritual ideas in there. Just this idea of what is reality, and I think spiritually that connects to me, and that I have to remember all that's going around me right now is not reality.
Yeah.
Right? I'm looking for a heavenly home.
Yep.
Very cool. Good answer.
Great. All right.
Yeah.
Start out hot. What is your favorite book?
The Bible.
All right.
Yeah.
Aside from the Bible, what's
favorite book besides the Bible? I'm not a big reader.
Okay.
But actually, another one of those, this goes way back, but Flowers for Algernon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That is it. That's a good one. Do you know what he's talking about, Albert?
I know that name. What is that?
So, you want to tell, I know there's a mouse and there's Alzheimer's involved. Yeah, go ahead. Tell it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they knew what it was called back then, but this patient, this person is mentally impaired, and they come up with some kind of medication or whatever that makes him super intelligent. And they have this mouse, And then the medication becomes ineffective. And so it goes through the whole process of this guy becoming, very, very intelligent and then losing that and going back down. Just, another one of those things of how sometimes we think things important that maybe aren't so important.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Two
deep answers.
Two deep answers so far.
All right. What is some advice that you hear commonly in your industry that you don't agree with?
That starts a whole new discussion. They are changing something in our industry that is going to be terrible on the industry. It's going to be terrible for the consumer. And it's all part of the green movement.
Okay.
Yeah, they're changing the way they manufacture cement, which cement, a lot of people use that as a generic term for concrete, right?
Mm-hmm.
But no, cement is actually the powder, which is the base product for concrete, which is, a milled up clinker material. It's a fine grind material that you add to the sand and the gravel. When with the water, it starts a chemical reaction, builds its own heat, and it's kind of like self-baking, right? And so that's what builds the strength and makes it all glue together. So they're changing the way they produce that because of supposed carbon emissions with the cement mills. And their answer for this is we're going to add limestone to it as basically a filler. And so what that means is there's less of this ground cement that's kilned. Therefore, we have less carbon emission. The problem with that is the final product does not have build the strength in the concrete that the previous product did. So what does that mean? You have to use more of it. So, you get less strength. Well, a project, the way they make their specs on projects is we want this concrete to achieve so many pounds per square inch within a 28-day period. And, if it's 3,000 PSI, if it's 4,000 PSI, it is what it is, right? You've got to put the components together to make that pounds per square inch requirement. Mm-hmm. Well, now you're using a less effective product.
Wow.
So it takes more of it. I fail to see how that's green.
Right.
If I use one product and it took, 100 pounds to do this, and now I use this other project and it takes 150 pounds to do that, how's that better?
Yeah.
It makes absolutely no sense at all. And I think it's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. My grandma has a good phrase for that, and it's, you can't fix stupid.
Yeah, that's exactly. And this country has gone insane.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and there's all these good intentions, but if the change that you make has these unintended consequences downstream that actually makes things worse, all the good intentions in the world won't change what the final outcome is.
Yep.
And so,
Yep.
Yeah, these sorts of big wholesale changes in industries really need to be thought out. I appreciate you bringing that up as an example.
Well, another example of that is with trucks and truck engines, and what you have to do now using diesel engine fluid, DEF, to supposedly lower your emissions. Interesting thing about that is when they put that equipment on the truck, makes the chassis heavier, it gets less fuel mileage.
So you're burning more fuel now.
Exactly. How did that fix a problem? It doesn't make any common sense.
Yeah.
And that's the deal. We've lost common sense.
Yeah.
Yep. There's another quote that's like, green energy is for people who can't do math.
That's a good one.
All right. That which leads me to the last fire round question. What words of wisdom or quote has impacted your life the most?
That is difficult because there's so many to choose from. Yeah. Best quote I can think of is love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
It kind of sums everything up.
Yep.
I love it.
If we all only did that, the world would be a better place.
That's right.
Definitely.
All right. How can we tell our listeners how to get a hold of you if they want to do business with you? What's the best way to get in touch?
Well, phone number, I guess.
Okay.
575-762-1938. That's our landline in Clovis. And we also have a website, which is clovisconcreteco.com. They can always check us out there.
Okay.
There's customer applications there and all kinds of good stuff. Concrete calculator and all that.
All right.
Awesome. Man, thank you so much. I had no idea what to expect, and you over-delivered. So thank you so much for coming.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I know we did.
Yeah.
It was incredibly insightful, and Tim is full of great stories. And so if you enjoyed that and you got value out of that episode, go ahead and click subscribe and come back for the next one. We have a lot of folks coming up that we're pretty excited about. And if you are a business owner or business leader and you feel stuck in your business, if you feel like your business is out of control and you don't know what to do next, go ahead and go to our website, stagcoaching.com, and click on the upper right-hand corner for our free business assessment. In just a few minutes, in just a few questions, our free assessment will help you diagnose what's going on with your business, what's going wrong and what's going well, and we can give you some ideas of the next steps to take. It's free, and it's on our website at stagcoaching.com. Thank you guys, and we'll see you on the next one.